Picture this. Before Zeus threw his first thunderbolt, before Aphrodite rose from sea foam, before any god had a name, there was only silence. But in that silence, something was listening. Something vast was dreaming. And tonight, that dream becomes yours. You're about to hear Greek mythology as it's never been told, not as epic battles or grand adventures, but as whispered secrets from a temple priestess who lived through it all. She watched gods being born. She saw titans fall. She knows what the history books got wrong. In the next hour, you'll discover why chaos wasn't chaotic, why Kronos wasn't really a monster, and what Athena whispered when she first opened her eyes. These aren't the myths you learned in school. These are the dreams that shaped them. But first, we need to prepare you for the journey. Find your perfect spot, bed, couch, that chair that knows your shape. Dim the lights. Tonight, time moves differently. Before we begin, drop a comment. Where in the world are you right now? And what does your sky look like? Are you under city lights or country stars? I love knowing we're sharing this moment across time zones. Your words are tiny lanterns in the dark. As your eyes grow heavy, imagine you're walking toward an ancient temple. Moonlight catches marble columns. Incense drifts on the wind. A figure in flowing robes waits at the threshold. The priestess who will guide your dreams. She's been waiting centuries to tell you this story. The gods have given their permission. The myths are ready to unfold. She raises her hand, and the air shimmers. Behind her, you glimpse something impossible. The moment before creation began. The void is not empty. It's pregnant with possibility. Come, she says. Let me show you what silence looked like before the world learned to breathe. And with that whisper, you step through time itself. You feel the floor appear beneath you, cool and pebbled, like the inside of a river stone. A faint green glow seeps through unseen cracks, pulsing in time with a heartbeat older than calendars. The void's chill thins, replaced by loamy warmth that smells of rain on dry dust. Somewhere below, something vast stretches. The whole silence flexes, like a drumskin. Most modern stories rush past this moment, eager to reach thunderbolts and palace fights. But creation is patient. Gaia does not burst from chaos. Like fireworks, she blooms, slow as moss on shaded rock. Picture an endless plain of dark soil, suddenly remembering it can breathe. A single breath swells beneath you. Valleys wrinkle into being, the way laughter creases a sleeping face. Cracks widen into canyons. Soft light spills upward. That light is not the sun. Suns are still rumors. It is Gaia's own body heat. Green dreams warming the newborn crust. You sense root threads searching for anchors. Though no plants exist yet, matter is practicing muscle memory. Above, a ceiling of nothingness thins to gauze. Tiny pieces learn the dance of air. Even gravity stumbles. Objects hover, then settle politely, embarrassed by their weightlessness. You watch mountains ride early tremors, like careful ships on first waves. Early poets carve Gaia as Mother Earth, but the oldest clay pieces call her first bed. They said everything alive was someone choosing to lie down upon her. That small change of words, bed instead of mother, changes everything. Gaia is comfort before care, steady ground before story. Feel her patience. She does not rush to paint herself with forests or oceans. She waits for her children, the titans, to wake and help lift the sky. She cannot yet carry alone. In the hush, you hear them. Deep bass, whispers, stone words grinding, as huge limbs unfold in underground dark. No roars, no rage, only the groan of boulders, deciding they could stand. 6 sons, 6 daughters, each a rule, more than a person. Oceanus flowing, even before water. Hyperion shining without sun. Rhea holding space for seasons unborn. They gather around Gaia's heartbeat, like babies around a fire, unsure where warmth ends and they begin. Let your breath copy theirs. In on 5 counts, out on 7. As your lungs stretch, imagine land plates drifting under calm seas that do not yet exist. Notice how peace can live with huge power. Size does not demand violence. The titans are not yet carved with faces. Faces are later tricks for storytelling minds. In this cradle time, they look like living landscapes. Ridged backs, like mountain ranges. Arms swinging slow as tidal shifts. Eyes wide and still as crater lakes. You sense no anger, only deep thinking. The way artists study uncarved marble, deciding which lines to set free. Some scholars laugh at the idea of thinking continents, but rock scientists admit the crust still moves. In great shutters they politely call mountain building. Myth simply gives personality to the underground conference call. You feel humming now, layer by layer. Melted whispers cool into granite promises. Hard rock vows to hold memories of every footstep yet to come. A tremor ripples outward, where hollow caves once floated. Caves now knit arches of clear quartz, catching Gaia's inner glow, scattering it like slow fireworks beneath the surface. You drift through one such cave, ceiling glittering with minerals, rehearsing future gemstones. Purple yawns, green sighs, diamond smiles without sparkle, because light is still theory. Somewhere overhead, baby winds swirl, tasting dust for the first time. Copper, sulfur, trace elements writing recipes. For blood, coins, and legends, the air presses gently against your eyelids, asking permission to exist. Even silence grows. Where once was total hush, now pockets of quiet and quieter form, separated by sounds too low to hear. These tiny pauses will someday be mistaken for peace treaties between warring skies and seas. Let this feeling remind you, growth is mostly waiting, broken by slow surprises. Allow your shoulders to settle heavier into whatever holds you. Imagine your backbone aligning, like stacked layers of earth. Calm, stable, ready for ages. There was once a mountain that learned to walk, before mountains knew they were supposed to stay still. It took one step every 1,000 years, so slowly that no one noticed, except the patient trees on its slopes. The walking mountain carried messages between the earth and sky. It would pause at valleys and whisper secrets to the rivers, then continue its slow journey across the world's first map. One day it met another walking mountain. They stood together for 10,000 years, just talking. Their conversation became the first earthquake, not from anger, but from the joy of finally being understood. When they finished talking, they decided to stay. Their roots grew deep. Their peaks touched clouds, and mortals later built temples in the valleys between them, never knowing they lived between two old friends sharing eternal stories. Beneath your feet, the titans start to press upward, eager to frame horizons and carry mountains like lanterns. Their rising rumbles through your bones, a lullaby sung by giants. Hold this tremor gently. It is the rhythm of the world's waking, but above, a different pulse flickers. Sharp, bright, impatient. In the distance, a storm child gathers sparks, in closed fists, waiting for his cue. When next we meet, thunder will ask the quiet earth for permission, and rebellions will bloom in the high air. The titans stretch like sleepers, feeling sunlight that does not yet exist. Their yawns become canyons. Their sighs become the first winds. They are the slow pulse, beneath every heartbeat, the steady drum that will hold rhythm, while faster gods dance above. You rest in their rising, feel the world's backbone settle into place, breathe with the pace of stone and root. Let Titan time flow through you, slow as growing mountains, patient as waiting seeds. Soon you will taste ash and bronze, as time itself begins to chew. But for now, you float on the first solid ground ever dreamed into being. cradled by giants, who learned to be gentle before they learned their own strength. You taste ash on your tongue, metallic and old, like time itself melting in your mouth. Each tick of an unseen clock echoes against your teeth, like distant hammer strikes in a forge. A low rumble shakes through your chest, pulsing with slow certainty. In the hush, you hear something chewing, patient, careful, yet you cannot find its jaws. Even the air feels thicker, heavy as cooled tar, pressing against your lungs. With the weight of swallowed moments, the old stories say Kronos feared a prophecy so much that he ate his own children. Ancient artists carved scenes of baby hugs, turning to empty swallows, mothers weeping into the folds of time. It is shocking, worthy of dark theater, but truth is gentler. Kronos is not a monster eating flesh. He is time itself. Anxious and exact, he does not binge eat. He marks endings. Every swallow marks the end of an age. Every eaten child becomes a sealed chapter in history's book. When he opens his mouth, future becomes past, as neat as a page turning. Imagine a writer working by flickering torch, pausing before ink meets paper. Kronos is that pause, measured, unavoidable, the sound of certainty being written. His hunger is not cruel, it is careful. He swallows what might unseat him, making sure only now remains. A dry joke hides in dusty scrolls. Kronos never celebrated birthdays. Who wants cake after eating your own guests? Yet some old pieces hint that swallowed princes and princesses were never lost. In the god forge of Kronos' belly, they found patience and deeper sight. When his sharp teeth ground destinies down, he prepared them for rebirth, stronger, wiser, unbound by time's rules. Rhea, his queen, learned this trick. She hid her youngest, Zeus, on a misty island of goat's milk, sowing seeds of rebellion in the quiet belly of her husband. This changes how we see devouring. Time does not destroy, it recycles. Foundations crumble only to support taller towers. What seems like eating is careful storing. Swallowed stories become bedrock for renewal. Think of autumn leaves feeding earth, dissolving into soil that will birth spring flowers. Kronos' children endured within him, growing until the moment was ripe. As you breathe, feel the rhythm of taking in and letting go. Notice how swallowing can be gentle, like a story folded into memory, rather than forced upon ears. In the golden hush, after each gulp, you sense the slow pulse of possibility, waiting to unfurl. There was once a clockmaker who built a clock that ate minutes, not to be cruel, but to keep them safe. The clock's belly was lined with soft velvet, where eaten minutes could rest, away from the harsh noise of now. The clockmaker fed his clock carefully. 1 minute at dawn, 1 at dusk. The eaten minutes whispered to each other in the velvet darkness, sharing stories of what they had seen, of children's first steps, of lovers' last kisses, of the way sunlight looked when it hit morning dew. Years passed. The clockmaker grew old. His hands shook. He could no longer wind his hungry clock. As he lay dying, the clock began to hiccup. All the eaten minutes spilled out, like coins from a broken purse. But they were not the same minutes. They had been changed by their time in darkness. Each minute now glowed. With the wisdom of waiting, they spread across the world, becoming the spaces between heartbeats, the pause before laughter, the breath before tears. The clockmaker smiled as he died. His clock had not eaten time. It had taught time to be kinder. Hold this taste of ash and bronze inside you. Kronos' chewing is a lullaby of endings, each echo a promise that something new stirs beneath. Every ending cradles a beginning. In the same breath, you feel the rhythm now, the slow pulse of time eating itself, only to be reborn. Each tick a tiny death, each talk a small birth. The world breathes in yesterday and breathes out tomorrow. While you rest in the space between, Ahead lies molten sky and lava-cracked earth. But first, remember the quiet power of time's swallowing breath, how endings can cradle beginnings. In the same hungry inhale, let that gentle tension carry you into the next hush, where dreams of giant shoulders and molten glow await. The ash taste fades, but its lesson lingers on your tongue like wisdom. Time is not your enemy. It is the gardener that prunes old growth, so new flowers can bloom. In the cleared space of now, you rest in Kronos' pause, the moment between swallow and digestion, between ending and beginning. Here, in this quiet space, you are safe from both past and future, held in the eternal now of a father's careful hunger. You drift again between waking and dreaming, cradled by warmth that feels like memory rather than heat. Beneath your closed lids, the sky pulses, molten rose and ember gray, not as fire, but as slow coals. Buried beneath ash, you sense breathless tension in the air, as if the world itself breathes in gentle waves. Across your skin, soft light shivers, like fingertips brushing velvet. The ground beneath you hums with echo tones you cannot name, low and steady, half heartbeat, half lullaby. In that vibration you taste faint iron tang, sweet as overripe fruit, left too close to flame. Shadows flow without shape, diffused outlines of drifting smoke, and sighs of steam, no hard edges, only gradients, pearl to charcoal, warmth to cool. In a single patience-filled sweep, light does not shine. It blossoms, slow as oil seeping through cloth, then fades again into perfumed dusk. A distant rumble echoes, like drums underwater, muted yet insistent. You feel the tremor through palms and soles, as if your body is a hollow vessel, accepting song. Each vibration rings hollow, hollow enough to cradle silence. Inside its belly, the scent of warm stone drifts in waves, granite warmed by unseen fires, hard rock cooled to tempered steel. It mingles with subtle musk of brimstone, not harsh, but tempered by sweetness, like resin burned in sacred rites, long forgotten. Beneath the molten glow, you sense a slow pulse, a rhythm that belongs to no single element. It is the hush before creation's next inhale, the pregnant pause when possibilities cue. Like whispered prayers, even the air feels layered, dense near ground, feather light at chest height, dissolving entirely near your crown. Your breath aligns with the world's rhythm. Inhale, 2 slow counts. Exhale, 3. Pause. Inhale, 2. Exhale, 3. Pause. Time dissolves into these gentle cycles, each a prayer folding into the next, until only the pulse remains. Sounds arrive as soft textures, a leathery sigh, a silk fold rustle, the muted tinkle of crystal, yet unformed. They feel less like noise, and more like distant vibrations of potential, waiting for shape. Sometimes you think you hear something like laughter, low and fluid, like metal on water, but when you lean in, it vanishes, leaving only that sense of something vast, smiling somewhere just beyond sight. Touch becomes imagination, the drift of embers landing on your cheek, the weight of unseen wings brushing the nape of your neck. You welcome the phantom touch. Let it travel down limbs, unfurling in warmth. Your mind hovers between echo and shadow, anchored only by the slow molten pulse that holds everything in uneasy balance. No names form here, no stories begin, only this hush, this careful stillness, and the promise that what surfaces next will arrive cradled in soft intention. In this floating space, memories mix with dreams. You remember things that have not yet happened. A titan's gentle laugh, the taste of ambrosia honey, the sound of marble being born from ordinary stone. There was once a dream that dreamed itself awake, It lived in the space between sleeping and waking, where thoughts are liquid and time flows backward. The dream collected moments that fell through the cracks of consciousness, a yawn half finished, a word half spoken, a tear half shed. It wove these fragments into a blanket made of pure possibility. When mortals slept, the dream would cover them with its blanket of almosts, and they would wake refreshed, not from rest, but from touching the edge of what could be. The dream never wanted to become real. It preferred the soft edges of maybe and might be. But sometimes, when the world was very quiet, people could feel its blanket brushing against their minds, like a feather made of hope. Let your awareness hover in that space, sink deeper into the glow. The interlude's ebb will end soon, but its hush will linger, a whisper in your bones, teaching you calm before thunder. Colors shift without warning, rose to amber, amber to deep violet, violet to silver, like aurora painted on the inside of your eyelids. Each hue carries its own temperature, its own weight, its own secret message. You taste the colors as they change. Rose tastes of summer twilight, amber of honey left in sunlight, violet of rain on heated stones, silver of the moment between lightning and thunder. Each flavor lingers on your tongue, then dissolves into the next. The molten pulse grows softer, like a giant's heartbeat, heard through thick walls. It syncs with your own rhythm until you cannot tell where your pulse ends and the world's begins. This is the gift of the interlude, the dissolving of boundaries between self and cosmos. Somewhere in the distance, footsteps approach, heavy but gentle, like mountains learning to walk. You do not fear them. You welcome their steady rhythm, the promise of story returning after this pause, this breathing space, this moment of pure being. The interlude breathes around you, like a living thing, made of warmth and waiting. Soon it will release you back into the flow of myth. But for now, you rest in its molten embrace, cradled by the heartbeat of the world's dreaming. Let the glow settle deeper into your bones. Carry this warmth with you when the stories resume, when gods begin to quarrel, when thunder splits the sky. Remember this moment of perfect floating in the space between breaths and heartbeats. You feel the wind sharpen into a blade of chill that slices through your cloak, carrying scent of salt and lightning from a distant shore. The sky cracks in muted blue flashes, not thunder yet, but the promise of storm. Beneath you, rock pulses with hidden warmth, as if the earth itself waits for a spark. In that charged hush, your breath catches, fear and hope quiver through every hair and bone, like an audience holding silence before the first note of a song. Most stories paint Zeus's uprising as a stormy tantrum, a bolt-wielding brat, shattering father and sky. In truth, his revolt was a careful rehearsal of justice, born in secret on the mist-draped Isle of Crete. Zeus drank goat's milk under the cloak of night, while Kronos' servants slept. Rhea, his mother, had learned that raw force creates only rower force, so she handed Kronos a swaddled stone, wrapped in baby cloth, and he swallowed it whole. Zeus grew up in the hush of caves, listening to the drip of stone teeth and the slow rumble of tides. He learned patience by tracing star patterns on cavern walls, and justice by watching shepherds tend flocks under star-studded skies. When he emerged, he did not charge Olympus with a roar, but with an olive branch messenger. Metis, goddess of cunning, slipped Kronos a cup of bitter wine. In one measured breath, the king threw up his children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and that stone-swaddled trick. This changes Zeus from spoiled heir to strategist. His thunderbolt, forged by one-eyed giants in smoky forges, was less weapon and more beacon, a symbol of balance. He bound his siblings to oaths of unity, forging alliances with clever words, instead of empty threats. When he challenged Kronos, it was not a blind charge, but a chess move. He invited the Titans to witness a feast, then struck from beneath banquet tables, turning their own table legs into pit traps. That tale of banquet betrayal is more rumor than record. Poets love a good trick, but old stone pieces suggest rites of passage on mountain altars, where young people acted out the fall of old kings through masked ceremony, rather than wholesale slaughter. Zeus's rebellion, then, was as much about ritual and renewal as it was about power. He did not simply seize control. He rewrote the rules by which power is passed, trading devouring for restoring, cruelty for calculated mercy. Under his rule, sky and sea learned boundaries. Poseidon carved channels for rivers to flow, and Hades agreed to rule the depths, rather than drag the living into darkness. Each domain found shape in the promise of order, rather than chaos's devouring maw. You sense that promise even now, in the hush of your own breath. Justice tempered by mercy, strength guided by wisdom. There was once a young eagle who lived in an old hawk's nest. The hawk had ruled the mountain for 1,000 years. His talons were sharp as winter. His cry could shatter stone. But he had grown tired and mean. He hoarded all the mountain's prey, leaving scraps for smaller birds. The young eagle watched the other birds grow thin. He saw how fear had made them forget how to sing, how to play, how to dream of anything beyond surviving another day. So the eagle began to plan. He did not attack the hawk with claws. Instead, he sang, every morning at dawn, a song so beautiful that other birds remembered their own voices. They began to sing with him, first one, then 10, then hundreds, until the whole mountain rang with harmony. The old hawk heard the singing and remembered when he too had sung. Before fear made him cruel, his heart cracked open. Like an egg hatching, he flew down to the eagle and asked to join the song. From that day forward, the mountain belonged to all birds. The hawk taught them wisdom, the eagle taught them courage, and every dawn they sang together, a song that could be heard in valleys far below. Zeus learned this lesson, that true power is not taken, but shared, not hoarded, but multiplied. When given freely, the rebellion succeeded not through violence, but through restoration. Zeus offered his father a choice, rule with mercy, or rest with honor. Kronos chose rest, and time itself relaxed into gentler rhythms, where seconds could stretch, and minutes could dance, and hours could dream. The new order brought balance, but not perfection. Gods still quarreled, still made mistakes, still learned through failure, but now their fights served greater harmony, like musicians arguing over the best way to play a song. You feel this shift in the air around you, the way tension can transform into possibility, the way rebellion can birth, not chaos, but deeper order. Your own breath finds new rhythm, neither the frantic panting of fear, nor the heavy sighs of despair, but the steady cadence of hope made practical. Zeus stands now on his first throne, not golden yet, not marble carved, just a simple stone seat on a wind-swept peak, where he can see all the domains, sky, sea, and shadow, spread beneath him, like a map of promises yet to be kept. The other Olympians gather, each carrying their own gifts, their own wounds, their own dreams of what this new world might become. They are young gods, still learning, their own power, still making. The mistakes that teach, humility, carry this promise in your chest. Rebellion need not mean ruin. Balance can emerge from cunning mercy, and power can be shared without shattering. Yet far beyond these mountain winds, new voices stir, voices born of ambrosia and moonlight, ancient echoes ready to re-echo the old revolt. The wind carries news of challenges ahead, wars that will test these new promises, but also of deeper wisdom, growing like roots beneath the surface of divine ambition. Soon you will taste the copper of long war, where brothers clash for 10 years running. But now, rest in this moment of new beginning, where justice first learned to wear a crown. You feel the ground tremble beneath your feet as distant war drums roll through mountain passes and echo against unseen cliffs. Each thunderous beat echoes like a hammer striking black iron, shaking through bone and marrow. In the charged dusk, the scent of lightning and scorched stone fills your nose, mingling with the copper tang of ruptured earth. A hush follows each pulse, as if the world catches its breath before the next roar, a lullaby of coming conflict that hums beneath your skin. Titans and Olympians did not clash in a single burst of rage, but tested each other's strength over seasons of strategy and surprise. Oceanus circled battlefields with swirling tides, while Hyperion's burning gaze carved pathways through enemy ranks on rocky walls. Atlas braced sky and shoulder, every breath a stubborn wall. In hidden valleys, Zeus and his siblings refined their thunderbolt formations, like generals studying maps. Each fight felt less like a duel and more like a ritual, measuring patience, strength, and the art of waiting for the perfect strike. Old bards loved tales of epic splitting and sky-shattering roars, drawing armies charging like cosmic freight trains. Yet temple records and scratched pottery pieces whisper of quieter moments, ceasefires brokered under twilight altars, silent truces sealed by shared offerings of ambrosia and fresh springs. Warriors on both sides paused to mend broken shields and exchange nods of weary respect, knowing the strange kinship born from shared struggle. In those pauses, swords rested in sheaths, and warriors tasted friendship rather than blood. Even Hephaestus joked that forging helmets beats battlefield noise. Behind thunderous clashes, divine strategists rethought tactics as mortals might adjust sails. In a sudden storm, Poseidon's three-pronged spears carved channels through Titan ranks, turning possible strongholds into spinning stone prisms. Herons that acted as spies in marshy backwaters, reporting on enemy movements with fleeting cries. Demeter, exiled from the court but fierce in revenge, wove fields of tangling vines that slowed giants' advance until Zeus's lightning split the sky overhead. Victory hung on more than muscle. It demanded the grace to adapt. Myth scholars disagree. When the war truly ended, some offer timelines spanning decades. Others compress years into single seasons. But most agree that 10 cycles of sun and moon circled before peace settled. In the final dawn, weary Titans and Olympians shared a silent breath, knowing that neither conquest nor giving up alone shapes legacy. Rather, it is the meeting of opposites, the hammer and the anvil, that forges worlds. From that fragile accord, the cosmos found its first balance, carved by conflict, but solidified by reluctant respect. There was once a blacksmith who forged swords that refused to cut. He spent years perfecting the metal, making blades harder than diamond, sharper than winter wind. But every sword he made would only clash against other swords, creating sparks and music, never wounds. Warriors came from distant lands to buy his weapons, but when they tried to fight, their battles became dances. Their wars became songs. The swords sang against each other, like bells in harmony, until enemies forgot why they had come to fight. The blacksmith's apprentice asked, "Why make swords that will not cut?" The old man smiled and pointed to his forge, where the fire burned without consuming the wood, where the hammer struck without denting the anvil, where the water cooled without drowning the flame. True strength, he said, learns when not to use itself. The greatest victory is the war that becomes a wedding feast. Years later, the apprentice became the blacksmith and continued forging swords that sang instead of slicing until the whole world learned to dance instead of die. Even today, those old battlefields remain etched into the bones of the world. Valleys bear grooves where titan fists once pressed, and cracks gape like silent mouths that tasted thunder. Rivers changed course in obedience to booming footsteps, carving new riverbeds that carried clay red as divine blood. Where Olympus now gleams in marble white, you can almost hear faint echoes, wind murmuring the names carved into stone by survivors. This land remembers struggle as surely as memory lives in you. Among the ruin, alliances forged in steel fire gave birth to lasting bonds. Poseidon and Hades, former enemies, recognized mutual strength and pledged silent kinship. Athena whispered counsel to fallen titans, urging peace over destruction. Those alliances sowed the seeds of cosmic order. As kinship tempered revenge, you sense that same current within your chest, a link between conflict's end and creation's calm, carrying hope where battle once raged. The war taught gods and mortals alike that victory is not conquest, but understanding, not the silencing of enemies, but the harmony of different voices singing the same song from different mountains. As the final echoes settle into memory, a respectful silence drapes the land like a well-worn cloak. Beneath that hush, you sense the gentle stirrings of rebuilding. Cracks in the sky await boundary lines, and waters murmur anticipation of new courses. Soon siblings born of war will draw their domains with whispered decrees. Sky above, sea below, and the hidden halls of shadow. At the world's roots, the drums fade now into distant memory, but their rhythm lingers. In your heartbeat, a reminder that even the longest conflicts can end in harmony if both sides learn to listen for the music beneath the noise. Hold this lesson close as you prepare for the next movement. In this cosmic symphony, where brothers will divide the universe itself into manageable portions, each taking responsibility for their piece of creation, learning that sharing power makes it stronger, not weaker. The war is over, the healing begins, and from the ashes of 10 years fighting, new order blooms like flowers in a battlefield. Where swords once clashed, now only songs remain. You sense the air itself splitting around you, every breath marked by a subtle click. As boundaries take shape, a low rhythmic hiss unfurls along the horizon, a faint slicing of sky from sea, of dusk from dawn. Lightning dances in slow motion, tracing seams in the empty air. Beneath your feet, the ground gapes at invisible fault lines, as if the world itself is being cut with a whispered blade. The scent of salt and brimstone mingles like a promise, sealed and then undone. In that charged moment, you feel the cosmos pause, waiting for borders to be named. Legend claims that when Kronos fell, the eldest siblings drew brittle lots to claim sky, sea, and underworld. Yet temple scrolls murmur of something deeper, a solemn covenant woven in twilight groves. Priests unfurled indigo-dyed cloths as cosmic maps beneath star-forged altars. With trident, thunderbolt, and two-pronged staff, gods traced their future domains in silver ash, each line both promise and boundary, spoken treaties etched into dust before words were named. In that celestial hush, Zeus breathed storms into the vaulted heavens, forging weather as border rather than weapon. Poseidon plunged his spear into salt flats, summoning tides that sculpted coastlines. In living ink, Hades wove silent corridors deep beneath the earth, gathering echoes, memories, and endings. In shadowed vaults, their actions were careful map-making, fluid edges and secret depths, defining realms that would coexist. In uneasy accord, artists and storytellers simplified this ritual into a lottery, but oldest clay shards depict a council. Hestia, the eldest, refused all land gifts, choosing instead to guard the ever-burning hearth at Olympus's heart. Her stepping back became the sacred fulcrum of balance, power not seized, but stewarded. She remained guardian of unity, a living keystone, linking sky, sea, and shade with the warmth of home. Beyond metaphor, the division carried living weight. Old priests of Eleusis recorded that when Poseidon carved channels with his spear, rivers wept new courses. Stones bowed to lightning's oath, and roots trembled as cracks wove through soil. Each gesture became a geological rite, mountains rising to test sky's edges, waters receding to honor the underworld's hush. There was no mastery without connection, each realm shaped by its overlap with others. Myth builders found cracks in the narrative. Earthquakes were Poseidon's restless footfalls, echoing through rocky seams, while eclipses recalled Hades, peering through holes in the vault. Old mosaics celebrated these fractures, with golden threads mending broken lines, a celestial gold patching, honoring imperfections. Those repairs reminded mortals that boundaries are living things, demanding respect and renewal, rather than blind fear. There was once a seamstress who sewed the edges of the world. Every morning she walked the borders, between day and night, between earth and sky, between waking and dream. Her needle was made of starlight, her thread spun from wind. She stitched carefully, never pulling too tight, never leaving loose ends. When the seam between seasons began to fray, she mended it with threads of falling leaves and melting snow. When the border between land and sea started to tear, she patched it with shells and driftwood and the laughter of waves. But her most delicate work was the seam between life and death. This border was gossamer thin, invisible to most eyes. She sewed it with threads made of last breaths and first cries, of final words and newborn sighs. Sometimes people would ask her why she worked so hard to keep the borders intact. Why not let everything flow together into one? The seamstress would smile and point to her tapestry, where each section had its own color, its own texture, its own purpose. Without borders, she said, there would be no beauty, only gray sameness. The edges don't divide. They define. They don't separate. They celebrate each unique thread in the cosmic weave. And so she sewed, from dawn to dusk, keeping the world's seams strong but flexible, defined but permeable, until the day she became part of the tapestry herself, her needle still stitching, her thread still flowing along the edges of everything. Even the edges breathed with possibility. At domain junctions, pillars of wind, water, and shadow conspired. Foam-tipped tides whispered through canyon mouths to greet lightning's electric sighs, and underground currents lifted mist into hollow caverns. These woven edges became enchanted crossroads, places where worshippers brought offerings of shell, feather, and flower, tokens to honor the meeting of realms. Pieces of Delphi reliefs show the brothers returning beneath Hestia's vaulted flame, wearing tokens of their realms. Zeus, draped in storm-shade garlands, Poseidon clasping shell and kelp, Hades girdled in midnight. Together they pledged to uphold the cosmic accord by that hearth, their unity anchoring the world's fragile balance. Though wars would come and tempests churn, this covenant remained. the silent drum beneath every pulse. The division was not conquest, but collaboration, each brother taking responsibility for his portion of creation, learning that isolated power crumbles like sand, but shared authority grows stronger with each challenge. They discovered that ruling means serving something larger than personal ambition. Zeus learned that sky without earth is empty theater. Poseidon found that seas without shores are meaningless motion. Hades realized that death without life is barren silence. Each needed the others to give their domain meaning, purpose, direction. Thus was drawn the world's first atlas, not ink on animal skin, but lived geography, born of divine hands. Sky, sea, and underworld, set like gemstones in a brooch of stars, each bordered by vows, woven in ash and flame. When you feel the air around you settle, remember those living edges linger still. The cosmos holds its shape, only so long as we honor the lines drawn at creation's first dawn. Carry this hush of covenant within you. With every heartbeat, feel the threads of sky, sea, and shadow weave around your ribs, binding space and silence into a single living tapestry. The world's edges have been traced. Now their keepers step forward to claim their roles. Ahead lies a queen, unfurling silent authority, a sovereign whose crown is woven of spite and devotion alike. In the next breath, you will encounter Hera's unyielding gaze, the weight of thrones, the flicker between mercy and wrath, and the whispered promise that no boundary holds without vigilance. Rest in this fragile calm before her footsteps herald the hush of royal decree. You taste warm pomegranate wine before you see her. The flavor is heavy, like dusk wrapped in silk. Her footsteps make no sound on the marble floor. Each step echoes in the quiet, like distant bells. A faint metal scent mixes with her perfume. She smells of sumac and roses, and something sharper underneath. You feel her watching you. The weight of her gaze sits in your chest. It's like 1,000 invisible hands holding your ribs, gentle but firm. In her shadow, even the tall pillars seem to bow. They lean toward her in respect. Most old stories paint Hera as a jealous wife. They say she spent her time being angry at Zeus. They tell how she wore peacock feathers like a crown, how she sent snakes into moonlit gardens. They make her sound petty and small, but the temple stones from old Greek cities tell a different story. The stones call her the keeper of promises, the weaver of bonds between people. She taught humans the sacred rhythm of giving and receiving. At her festivals, women stood in the first light of dawn. They offered prayers for hearts that would stay true. These were not rituals born from spite. They came from love that was carefully tended. Festival priests remember how Hera made peace between fighting cities. She sent messengers dressed in golden robes. They reminded kings that friendships are built in kitchens as much as on battlefields. Her advice shaped laws that held families together. She forged trust between communities with threads that could not break. She was not a spiteful queen. She was the firm boundary that kept love from falling apart under the weight of ambition. When promises broke, priests whispered her name into the cracks. They begged the queen to fix broken words with her steady hands. Her anger was real. The myths talk about storms that lasted for years. They tell of disguised mortals suffering divine punishment for forgotten rituals. But those stories hide a deeper truth. Hera's punishments were precise corrections. They were measured to restore balance, not to crush. When Lyssa, the goddess of madness, first ran wild in the oracle city, Hera planted sacred barley in the ground. She anchored the madness to earth, so reason could grow again. Her fury was not blind rage. It was careful reclamation. She took back order from chaos. Archaeologists dig up tokens from Hera's sacred groves, small ivory keys and clay torches, symbols of doors opened and promises lit. Each temple doorway marked an agreement, vows that would last through seasons of drought. just as surely as they would last through times of plenty. In some old inscriptions, worshippers compared their marriages to twin trees planted side by side, roots tangled together underground, but crowns reaching separately toward sun and sky. Hera's blessing was a craft. It needed careful growing, not just fleeting emotion. Under her royal coldness, Hera's loyalty ran deeper than any ocean. When Zeus drifted toward storms of pride, she wove subtle magic into his dreams. She guided him back to wisdom and counsel. Her influence was less like thunder and more like underground springs, unseen but feeding every flower that dared to brighten the world. Through patience and measured will, she shaped both divine and mortal realms. In a valley between two warring villages, there lived an old woman who wove impossible things. She wove sunlight into golden thread. She wove the sound of rain into silver cord. She wove the scent of roses into crimson ribbon. The villagers from both sides came to her. They wanted her to weave weapons, nets to trap their enemies, ropes to bind their prisoners. But the old woman shook her head. She said she only wove things that connected, never things that separated. Instead, she began weaving a great tapestry. In it, she showed the history of both villages, how they had once been one people, how they had shared harvests and celebrations, how their children had played together by the same river. As she wove, people from both villages came to watch. They saw their grandparents in the threads. They saw their own faces reflected in the patterns. Slowly, they began to remember. They began to talk to each other, instead of shout. When the tapestry was finished, the villages were at peace. The old woman smiled. She had woven the strongest thing of all. Not rope or net, but understanding. The people asked her name. She said, "I am the one who remembers that all threads come from the same source." Ancient records show that Hera's temples were places of reconciliation. When families fought, they brought their disputes to her altars. Her priests would light candles for each person involved. Then they would weave the flames together with careful hands. The joined light became a promise, a vow to work toward understanding. Hera's marriage to Zeus was not perfect. The stories make that clear. But it was enduring. It bent without breaking. It weathered storms and droughts and the changing seasons of divine politics. In their long partnership, mortals saw a model, not of perfection, but of persistence. The Queen's festivals celebrated not just romantic love, but all kinds of bonds, friendships that lasted lifetimes, communities that supported each other through hardship, the sacred connection between teacher and student, between healer and patient, between storyteller and listener. You can feel the iron strength of her presence settling into your bones now. Let her resolve flow like molten gold through your veins. It forges hidden strength where doubt once flickered. Her promise of unwavering devotion carries you forward into the next dawn where wisdom itself will be born. Ahead lies the birth of Athena, wisdom wearing maiden's armor. The world will tremble at the spark of her first breath. Carry Hera's oath of steady faithfulness into that moment. Meet the goddess of wisdom with courage kindled by royal resolve. The air grows tight around you, charged with expectation. Something miraculous approaches, something that will change the very nature of thought itself. You feel a sudden stillness crack the sky above you. The air freezes in the middle of a sigh. A cool metal taste dances on your tongue. It tastes like steel under pale moonlight. The ground hums with one single pulse, less like an earthquake, more like a heartbeat. The sound echoes from a hidden forge you cannot see. In that quiet, you sense the glint of cold bronze, the sharp curve of a helmet taking its first breath. Every breath you take feels pressed down, charged with waiting. A thunderclap without sound moves through your bones. Behind your closed eyes, a bright figure unfolds. Athena wakes. Most scrolls make Athena's birth sound like a loud show. They tell how Zeus got a terrible headache. He groaned on top of Mount Olympus. He clutched his forehead as roaring winds tore through the palace halls. From that skull-splitting pain, Athena burst out. She wore gleaming armor. Her helmet faced backward. Her spear was ready for the first fight. No midwife helped. No cradle rocked her. Poets loved the crack of skull and the metal fanfare that followed. A birth more like forging than naming. She skipped being a baby. 0 diapers needed. But thinking of her only as a war goddess misses her true nature. Athena is first, the goddess of wisdom, a living library of strategy and cleverness. She taught mortals how to graft olive trees, how to make pottery. She wove the first threads of civilization into looms of clay and cloth. In battle, she liked careful ambushes and smart talking more than brute force. City walls named after her had shields. Yes, but they also had libraries. Warriors visited sages in Athena's temples before they raised their spears. Her shield was often drawn as goatskin with horns. It meant not just terror, but protective shelter. Strategy wrapped in mythic fleece. Athena's guiding hand shaped mortal heroes too. She whispered clever advice to Odysseus. He drifted in disguise among his own people. She taught him that silent patience can beat armies. To Perseus, she lent a mirror shield. He could face Medusa's deadly gaze without turning to stone, a lesson in reflection over recklessness. She pressed wisdom into Achilles' heart. She urged him to weigh honor against fate before charging into Troy's walls. Not a goddess of blind fury, she stands at civilization's doorway, a strategist who crafts victory with the mind's chisel, not war's hammer. Pottery pieces show heroes wearing her owl-feathered cloak, proof of gratitude for divine direction. Ancient city rituals showed Athena's many-sided role. At the great festival, citizens paraded under her banner. They offered fancy robes woven with mythic patterns, tokens of thanks for her protection. She was as comfortable beside the weaver's loom as beside the battlefield. In some ceremonies, judges called on her name before trials. They sought fair advice, not divine fear. She inspired artists to carve marble statues, architects to align columns with cosmic harmony, children to master the mystery of knots. The goddess of practical knowledge, she balanced the scales of mind and muscle. She reminded mortals that true power marries thought with strength. Worshippers left helmets at her shrines, gifts not of conquest, but of respect. They honored battles won through wisdom. Pottery pieces and oil lamps carved with owl shapes honored her nighttime guidance. Owls meant watchful insight. Festivals invited young philosophers and generals to compete. Athletic games, music, debate. They celebrated the harmony of thought and action. Her presence lived in every olive tree and quiet workshop, a constant promise that creation and defense come from the same source. In an ancient forest, there lived a young hunter who trusted only his strength. He had powerful arms and sharp eyes. He could track any animal, but he always hunted alone. He scorned the old hunters who sat by fires, sharing stories and strategies. One moonless night, he chased a white deer deeper into the woods than he had ever gone. The deer led him through thorny paths and across rushing streams. Finally, exhausted, the hunter collapsed beside a hollow tree. From the darkness above, a voice spoke, soft but clear. "Why do you hunt in anger?" The hunter looked up. A great owl perched on a branch. Its eyes gleamed like amber lanterns. "I'm not angry," the hunter said. "I'm strong." The owl tilted its head. "Strength without wisdom is just noise. Watch." The owl spread its wings. It flew silent as shadow through the branches. It caught a mouse without a sound, without disturbing a single leaf. "Your strength crashes through the forest," the owl said. "It warns every creature of your coming. My quietness feeds me every night." The hunter spent 3 days with the owl. He learned to move like mist, to read the language of broken twigs and bent grass, to understand the songs of different birds. When he returned to his village, he was still strong, but now he was wise too. He became the greatest hunter in memory, not because he could fight harder, but because he could think deeper. The owl visited him in dreams for the rest of his life, always asking the same question: what did you learn in the darkness today? Feel the echo of that first gentle armored breath settle in your chest. You carry the ring of metal on metal, the shock of bronze against bone. Remember how wisdom can arrive wearing battle gear, how strategy can use might without meanness. In the stillness, an owl calls from secret oak groves, far from your reach. Its feathers stir incense-heavy air. Soon you will drift into the second dreamy pause. In that quiet, pillars breathe. Owls murmur through smoke and shadow. Shadows weave soft secrets. Lean into that subtle shift. Let your bones softly echo the goddess's calm steel. Let the contrast of armor and silence guide you deeper. When you next awaken, the temple will breathe ancient truths on feathered wings. You will learn what the night's watch truly sees. The air grows thick with invisible incense. Stone corridors stretch ahead into velvet darkness. Your footsteps will soon make no sound at all. You drift into tall corridors where stone pillars breathe under a veil of incense smoke. The air is thick with whispered textures and shadow-kissed calm. Tiny dust particles swirl like small lanterns caught in cathedral silence. Soft footsteps echo only in memory. As darkness wraps the world in velvet quiet, under your fingertips, ancient tapestries stir. Each thread quivers in the slow swirl of unseen currents. You close your eyes and feel the quiet geometry of arches and vaults, a living maze of hush and subtle echo. A soft rustle drifts overhead. Owl wings feather the stillness. Each downy plume stirs tiny whirlpools in the gloom. Their wing beats are muffled pulses, like borrowed heartbeats from dusk itself. You lift your head. You imagine pale feathers brushing corridors without candles, but no shape appears. Only the echo of gentle flight. The scent of wet earth drips in from hidden courtyards. It mingles with incense to create sacred perfume. Moss and honey mix together. Distant hoots ripple through columns. They speak in slow, careful syllables. They linger like lullabies carved in stone. Silence shapes itself around you. Every breath you release becomes pale vapor. It drifts slow and deliberate. Faint textures shimmer at the edge of sight. Stone carvings worn smooth by centuries of meditation. Grooves that hold echoes of peaceful chants. The air hums with untold secrets. A tapestry woven from quiet and out-of-focus glow. Under your feet, small tile stones murmur under invisible weight. Each stone recites memory in muted vibrations. You sense time folding, each moment tucking into the last like pages in an unwritten book. No words intrude here, only the soft architecture of breath and shadow. Somewhere deep in the hush, soft feathers brush your temple, an intimate touch too delicate for sight. It stirs goosebumps along your neck. You welcome the phantom caress. Let it drift down shoulders and elbows. It unfurls warmth where tension once lived. A distant single hoot breaks the quiet, deep and deliberate, as if the night itself gave permission to exist in this fragile nowhere. In that note, you hear ancient watchfulness, a guardian's promise carved in silence rather than speech. Light itself seems porous here. Soft glimmers seep through cracks in vaulted ceilings. They pool like liquid pearl on marble floors. You taste their cool brightness on your lips. It's tempered by the faint tang of tree resin and root ember. With every inhale, you draw in the hush. With every exhale, you release thought back into the drifting dusk. Each cycle deepens your surrender. It aligns your pulse with the careful rhythm of unseen wings. At the center of this quiet, a pulse quickens, a subtle vibration humming under stone and shadow. It feels like a heartbeat borrowed from midnight itself, measured and kind. It anchors your drift into gentle forgetting. Here, stories pause and breathe. Here, every absence blossoms into possibility. Story 5. The Library of Whispers in the Heart of an Ancient City. stood a library, unlike any other. Its books had no words. Its shelves held only silence. People came from distant lands to read there, but they read with their hearts instead of their eyes. The librarian was an old woman who spoke only in whispers. She had collected every type of quiet in the world: the silence of snow falling, the silence of deep water, the silence of lovers sleeping side by side, the silence of prayer, the silence of awe. Each silence lived in its own section of the library. Visitors would sit in different areas, depending on what they needed to hear. Those who came with troubled hearts sat in the section of peaceful silence. Those who came with busy minds sat in the section of empty silence. The strangest section was at the very center. It held the silence that comes just before understanding. People would sit there for hours, waiting, listening to nothing, and then suddenly, they would know things they had never learned. They would understand truths they had never been taught. The old librarian would smile when this happened. She would nod and whisper, "The best knowledge comes not from adding words to the mind, but from taking them away." When visitors asked how the library worked, she would lead them to a small alcove. There, carved in stone, was a single line: "In the space between thoughts, wisdom lives." The library still stands today, but only those who have learned to listen with their whole being can find it. Let the feathered hush cradle you. Let the whispered throne of silence hold you safe. Soon the interlude will ripple into memory. It will yield to the next stirring of myth. But for now, you remain suspended in this sacred quiet, guided by owl-soft wings through the silent heart of night. The temple breathes around you like a living thing. Its stone ribs expand and contract with ancient rhythms. Each archway frames a deeper mystery. Each shadow holds a secret story waiting to unfold. You float between waking and dreaming, between the myths you have heard and the truths you are discovering. In this threshold space, wisdom wears feathers instead of armor. Understanding comes on silent wings instead of thunderous declarations. Your own heartbeat slows to match the temple's pulse. Your breathing deepens to match the owl's patient rhythm. In this alignment, you become part of the ancient story, not just listening to it, but living within it. The incense grows thicker, the shadows deepen. Somewhere in the distance, a new voice begins to stir, a voice that speaks of beauty rising from sea foam, of love that connects all living things, of the power that flows between hearts like tides between shores. But that is still to come. For now, rest in the owl's domain. Let the feathered silence teach you its deepest lessons. Let the whispered wisdom of ages settle into your bones like blessing. You taste salt on your lips before you feel the water's pulse, a gentle throb like the sea itself, opening its eyes in dawn's hush. Foam drifts across your cheeks, cool white lace brushing skin. The horizon shimmers with pearl-like light. Under the surface, currents hum in low notes. As if the ocean rehearses its first song, you breathe in the salt and musk of warmed shells. You feel goosebumps bloom where droplets cling. Each breath aligns with the soft roll of waves. They whisper lullabies in hushed rhythms that stir the soul. Old legends paint Aphrodite's birth as a sudden show, foam swirling around a shell that drifts to shore. A naked goddess, stepping fully formed into dawn. Poets love that moment, hair fanning like kelp, body glistening with salt pearls, the very air trembling at her beauty. But temple hymns offer a richer truth. She is not just a vision of desire. She is the living heart of connection, the breath between souls. Aphrodite did more than spark hearts ablaze. She charted the art of union. She guided mortals to weave bonds as lasting as coral reefs. Priestesses at her sacred places speak of early rituals. Worshippers offered woven shells and rose water at dawn. They did not pray only for passion's fire. They prayed for compassion's grace, teachings credited to the sea-born goddess herself. She showed farmers how to coax olive blossoms into fruit, by whispering words of gratitude to the land. She taught builders how to sculpt temples that rang with harmony, arranging columns like notes in a song. In many shrines, simple pottery pieces show Aphrodite guiding seamstresses and musicians, her hands poised as if shaping unseen melodies. Archaeologists uncover prayer tablets with "More than grant me love" written on them. They read, "Teach us to forgive as waves forgive their shore, to renew what time wears away, to find beauty in every broken piece." Those inscriptions suggest her influence shaped not just hearts, but entire communities. She strengthened civic bonds through festivals of making peace. In some coastal towns, city leaders would act out her emergence in masked processions. Participants waded chest deep into waves. They offered tokens to invoke harmony rather than desire alone. Sea foam underfoot became sacred soil, a reminder that true beauty arises from mingling, not from standing alone. Artists struggled for centuries to capture Aphrodite's many layers, often reducing her to naked form, but surviving mosaics reveal deeper symbols. Dolphins at her feet mean playful counsel, not mere fun. Roses wrapped around her wrists mean both pleasure and pain. They remind worshippers that love's depth often carries thorns. Shell patterns carved into temple doorways meant safe passage for pilgrims seeking emotional healing. In song fragments, scribes credit her with the first teachings of empathy. They insist that understanding another's sorrow is love's most powerful spark. Consider the sea's own contradiction, gentle caress at the shore, yet capable of reshaping coastlines in storms. Aphrodite holds that same duality, soft as dew on rose petals, fierce as surf-battering cliffs. She does not command with thunder or earthquakes. Her power flows through subtle shifts of heart and tide. When cities quarreled over trade routes, they turned to her mediation rituals, offerings cast into surf, to plead for balanced exchange rather than conquest. Waves carried messages. They bore tokens back in driftwood or shells, a divine messenger sealing agreements with salted kisses. Story 6. The Pearl Diver's Gift. On a small island lived a pearl diver who was known for his greed. He dove deeper than anyone. He held his breath longer than anyone. He collected the most beautiful pearls in the sea, but he kept them all for himself. The other divers struggled to feed their families. They asked him to share his secret diving spots. He refused. They asked him to teach their children his techniques. He turned away. His heart grew as hard as the shells he cracked open. One dawn, he dove to the deepest part of the reef. There, in a cavern of coral, he found the largest oyster he had ever seen. It was old beyond measure, covered in barnacles and sea moss. When he pried it open, inside lay not a pearl, but a mirror made of water. In that liquid mirror, he saw himself as others saw him, clutching his pearls like a miser, alone in his house while neighbors went hungry, his children avoiding him because he never had time to play, his wife's eyes sad because he loved treasure more than people. The water mirror spoke without words. The most beautiful pearl is worthless if no one else can see it shine. The diver wept underwater. His tears mixed with the sea. When he surfaced, he swam straight to shore. He gathered all his pearls and shared them with the village. He taught everyone his diving secrets. He spent evenings telling stories instead of counting treasure. Years later, when travelers asked about the island's prosperity, the villagers would point to their former miser. That man, they would say, learned the true value of pearls. They are meant to be given, not hoarded. The diver lived to be very old. He never found another pearl as valuable as the moment he chose to share. As you breathe, imagine that same foam-born grace rising within you. Feel each inhale stir gentle empathy in your chest. Each exhale releases harsh edges into gentler currents. Let the memory of rising from seaborn hush linger on your tongue, a soft whisper guiding you toward unity. Notice how the horizon's glow warms from pale silver to rose-tinted gold. It promises dawn not only of light, but of shared understanding. Soon you will hear wine-sweet laughter rising on the breeze. Dionysus at play in moonlit vines, ready to rewrite rules with fermented joy. But before that, hold this moment of shimmering calm, the hush of ocean birth, the weightless pulse of connection cradled in foam. Let Aphrodite's tempered power settle in your ribs like a gentle tide. Carry her lesson of woven bonds and compassionate strength into the next twilight's revelry, where boundaries blur and joyous chaos beckons with open arms. The taste of salt water lingers on your lips, a reminder that all life comes from the same source. All hearts beat with the same rhythm. All souls seek the same connection. In the space between waves, love teaches its most essential lesson. We are never truly separate. We are droplets in the same vast ocean, returning always to our source. You stand nowhere, yet you feel wind comb your hair, wind that has no source. Darkness kisses your cheeks, cool as river stones. A hush presses against your ears, so complete, so vast. Your own pulse sounds strange, like a shy drummer beneath endless velvet. There is no up, no down, no beneath, only weightless quiet, and the faint taste of becoming. Something vast draws its first breath. You drift, untethered, in the womb before words, listening for the moment silence chooses to end itself. Most scrolls lie. They claim chaos was a roaring storm, a cosmic blender spitting planets like angry fruit. But elder priests whispered different truths. Chaos was not noise, it was absence, a perfect pause. The gods still envy this silence. Picture a cathedral, unfinished, stones stacked neatly nearby. Sunlight waits outside empty windows, polite as a visiting king. Inside that pause, possibility gathered, like morning dew. Every droplet held a folded universe, quiet as a closed fan. Time watched itself from every angle, still unborn, wondering which face to wear first. Space rehearsed distances, stretching, snapping back, like a bowstring made of starlight. You float among them, a borrowed ghost. You sense how close everything came to never existing at all. Scrolls skip this risk. They love explosions. Scribes adore fireworks. Let your eyes adjust to the dim. Notice how silence has layers, like music made of hush. Beneath everything hums a note, so deep it feels like gravity thinking. Above it threads a higher tremor, ideas comparing outfits, whispering to each other. No visuals yet, only shifts in temperature. Tiny breezes, where galaxies may spin someday. A subtle ripple passes through, like someone clearing their throat. In an empty church, that ripple is Ge, the seed sigh. She will become Gaia, practicing her first word in secret. She waits, shy of waking emptiness too quickly. Anticipation is richer than revelation. There was once a man who collected silence. He lived before the world began, when only quiet existed. He kept silence in small glass jars. Each jar held a different kind of quiet, the silence of snow falling, the silence of deep water, the silence of waiting. His favorite jar held the silence between heartbeats, the pause before a word is spoken, the breath before a song begins. One day he opened all his jars at once. The silences mixed together. They became the first darkness, the first emptiness, the first possibility. The man smiled. His collection had become the canvas for everything that would ever exist. He whispered one word into the mixed silence, begin, and chaos yawned and stretched and prepared to dream the world. Poets paint chaos as swirling soup, messy cosmic stew, sizzling and wild. But bronze tablets, older than ink, tell different stories. They speak of order within void, corridors of nothingness, lined like moonlit halls, full of patience. Inside those corridors, concepts waited in line, heat behind cold, motion behind stillness. like pilgrims at temple gates, waiting for one nod to begin. Listen closer. Hear each unborn element practice. Water loosens its grip on itself, pretending to ripple across stones not yet carved. Fire hums in quick clicks, testing how fast it might devour distance. Once distance is invented, air curls around your ankles. You have no body yet, but air rehearses anyway. Lift and lullaby at once. Earth stays silent. Its quiet weighs more than all other whispers combined. Aromas drift past you, with no origin you can name. Dry sweetness of crushed paper, cool minerals, suggesting cave walls, not yet carved, faint ozone, where lightning holds its breath. Each scent is a promise, an IOU from future to present. The world writing checks. It cannot yet cash. The myth truth is simple. Chaos was not explosion. It was a careful sigh, a deliberate breath that organized everything by releasing nothing too quickly. Creation is pacing, a storyteller, pausing, so the next word arrives, weightless and right. Through this knowing, warmth spreads along your spine, like star stuff cooling from the forge. Let it flow to shoulders, elbows, fingertips, toes. Feel your outline redraw itself. In calm light, if eyelids flutter, let them settle, like curtains in a quiet theater. The show has not started, but the hush is already applause. From the corner of this pre-world, a ripple grows, gathering courage, like a child about to shout. In an empty hall, when it speaks, shape will chase sound. Darkness will split open, like ripe fruit. For one heartbeat more, you linger, in perfect hush, tasting calm. Remember this flavor. We will need it later, when titans wake, when gods quarrel like thunderclouds, wearing crowns made of lightning. You breathe once more, in the space before beginning. The ripple thickens. Something vast prepares to stretch, to yawn, to remember it has a body. In the next silence, the first floor will appear, cool and pebbled, like the inside of a river stone. Green glow will seep through cracks, pulsing with a heartbeat, older than calendars. But for now, you rest. In the last moment of perfect quiet, the gods exhale above you. Their stories drift down to cradle your closing eyes. The womb of all stories rocks you gently in the silence before the first word is ever spoken. You feel the air shift into something sweeter and wilder. Every breath now carries the faint perfume of crushed grapes and jasmine. A distant murmur shivers through the dusk, almost like laughter, soft and secretive. It curls around your spine. Heat ripples across your skin as vine leaves brush unseen paths along your arms. The world tilts, no longer rigid stone, but living tangle. Boundaries loosen. Every exhale tastes of fermenting possibility. In that charged quiet, you sense permission, a gentle urging that encourages you to fold into the revelry beneath your ribs. Stories tell of Dionysus as the god of wine and madness, draped in leopard skins and trailing ivy, leading satyrs in frenzied dance under moonlight. They speak of his bark-crowned head, songs of roaring parties, where even gravity seemed like a suggestion rather than law. But temple poets whisper a more subtle truth. Dionysus is the liberator of hidden selves, the one who teaches mortals the grace of undoing. His wine is not mere indulgence, but a sacrament of release, a nectar that dissolves the walls mortals build inside their minds. Even vines need a little encouragement before they unwind. In small courtyards, devotees planted young vines at his festival. They circled them with wine-soaked torches to bless the coming year's harvest. Priests recited verses that urged crowd and crown alike to surrender stiff formality, to speak truth under velvet hymns. They celebrated not chaos for its own sake, but transformation. Grief shed like spent skins, Fear poured out like the last drop from a cup. Masks worn in processions were not for deception, but revelation. They allowed faces too long hidden to emerge under the flicker of torchlight. Archaeologists find wine jugs inscribed with more than drink deep. One jar from an ancient island reads, "Teach me to cross the threshold of my own silence." Another from a sacred grove bears the phrase, "In your cup, I learn the shape of my own soul." These inscriptions suggest Dionysus guided mortals to navigate the in-between spaces, edges between day and night, reason and reverie, self and other. His festivals wove theater and ritual together. They blurred roles, so actors became prophets. Worshippers became characters in their own lives. He did not cast aside structure entirely. His rites followed precise choreography, voices lifted in measured choruses, drums pulsing in patterns that mirrored heartbeat. In that blend of discipline and abandon, worshippers discovered something profound. Freedom was not random escape, but carefully guided flight. Sacred dances taught the body to speak what the mind feared to name. Hymns taught the tongue to taste truth rather than swallow pretense. In those twilight ceremonies, each step became a vow, each stanza, each sip of wine, a promise to remember hidden yearnings, to honor the parts of oneself usually kept silent. Some myths mock Dionysus for madness unleashed, wild beasts trampling vineyards, revelers lost to frenzy. But temple scrolls stress balance. They warned that liberation without anchoring can become its own prison. To temper excess, priests led silent dawn processions after night's revel. They carried emptied vessels as symbols of restraint and renewal. They taught that every unbridled exhale must be matched with a breath of reflection, wine poured out to water the soul, then cup washed clean for morning's first light. Story 7. The Vintner's Wisdom. In a valley famous for its wine, lived a vintner who made the most sought-after vintage in the land. Kings and merchants traveled great distances to taste his creation, but the vintner had a strange rule. He would only sell his wine to those who could answer one question correctly. The question was simple: what is the difference between drinking and tasting? Most visitors answered quickly. Drinking quenches thirst. Tasting brings pleasure. The vintner would shake his head and send them away empty-handed. Drinking is for quantity. Tasting is for quality, others would say. Again, the vintner refused to sell. One day a young woman arrived at his vineyard. She had traveled for months to reach him. When he asked his question, she was quiet for a long time. She watched the workers in the fields. She observed how they handled each grape with care, how they sang while they worked, how they smiled at each other across the rows. Finally, she answered, "Drinking is what you do alone. Tasting is what you do with gratitude." The vintner's eyes lit up. "Yes," he said, "and gratitude connects us to the vine, the soil, the sun, the rain, and everyone who helped bring this moment to your lips." He poured her a cup of his finest wine. As she tasted it, she understood. In that single sip, she felt connected to the entire valley, to its history, to its people, to the earth beneath her feet. "This is why I ask the question," the vintner explained. "Wine is not about forgetting the world. It's about remembering our place in it." The woman returned to her village with more than wine. She carried a new understanding of how joy shared becomes wisdom. Carry the hum of that transformation within you. Now, inhale the riot of scents. Grape, honey, cedar. Exhale the weight of unspoken sorrow. Let the gods' gentle subversion reshape your ribs. It carves space for laughter alongside grief. Remember that breaking rules need not break you. Sometimes the softest revolution blooms from a single shared cup. Soon you will follow Demeter's silent vigil, where grief becomes grain and love descends into shadowed harvests. In the hush that follows Dionysus's laughter, prepare your heart for Demeter's slow lament, for Persephone's entwined fate, a tale of loss and renewal woven through seasons of light and shade. Let the echoes of fermented joy guide you into the next story, where sorrow and solace dance beneath autumn's amber skies. The vine leaves continue to brush your skin like gentle reminders. The world has tilted back toward balance, but the permission to transform remains, tucked like a seed in the corner of your heart, ready to bloom whenever rigid walls threaten to close in again. In the distance, you hear the sound of wheat rustling in fields, a mother's voice calling across golden acres, searching, always searching. The season is changing, from the wild freedom of harvest festival to the deep ache of winter's approach, from celebration to separation, from finding to losing. But even in that turning, the cycle continues. What appears to end is only transformation, wearing a different mask. You taste dust and wilted grain on your tongue as the summer sun dims into autumn's sigh. A tremor shivers through fields of golden stalks. Each head bows heavy with promise yet to be fulfilled. The air carries a hollow hum, the world tuning itself to Demeter's broken song. In that hush, you feel a mother's ache unfurl like root rot beneath the earth, a pain so vast it warps the very rhythms of harvest. When Persephone vanished beneath the pomegranate tree, Demeter's tears became rivers of loss. No mortal dam could hold them. Myths speak of her wandering in a ragged cloak, torch in hand, searching every hollow and grove until she stumbled upon an empty throne beneath oak and ash. Priests carved that empty throne into temple doorways, silent monuments to grief that welcomes all who seek comfort. In truth, her sorrow was more than loss. It was an unmaking of seasons, a goddess's sorrow, reshaping the world to mirror her hollow heart. Temples groaned under autumn yields. Crops withered in fields where Demeter's despair seeped like frost. Farmers lit sacred fires. They hoped warmth might coax her calm, but their embers chilled to ash. They offered first fruits and chants, but the goddess turned away, her gaze as distant as moonlight on barren soil. Some scrolls claim she cursed mortals to starve, but local hymns insist she spared villages that mourned with open hearts. She taught compassion by letting loss be shared rather than ignored. In the underworld shadow, Persephone tasted 6 seeds of pomegranate, each jewel-red orb sealing her fate. Scholars argue she chose half her fate with longing hands. Others say Hades tricked her with cunning sweetness. Either way, her descent bound her to a realm of silent stone and river quiet, where echoes of sunlight ghosted through cavern mouths. Yet even there, she carried Demeter's lessons. She softened Hades' throne with the memory of spring's warmth. She wove threads of light into endless night. When they spoke again, mother and daughter found balance in the cycle of grief and hope. Demeter agreed to 6 months of shade, winter's hush, so Persephone might spend half her time above, coaxing green from earth's sleep. In that treaty, priests found a ritual blueprint. Each spring they buried tokens of seed and sorrow in marble urns. Each autumn they retrieved them, offering remembrance honeyed with gratitude. Their rites taught mortals that loss need not be final, but rather a prelude to renewal. Old fragments reveal prayer tablets inscribed, "Teach me to honor what is gone and trust what will return." In some villages, widows joined farmers in spring sowing. Shared grief forged solidarity. Fields sown with tears and hope in equal measure. Temple murals show Persephone crowned with early flowers, symbols of resurrection, her face both youthful and farewell worn, a living testament to the duality of partings. Story 8. The Gardener's Promise. In a mountain village lived an old gardener whose daughter was his greatest joy. She helped him tend the plants from sunrise to sunset. She knew the name of every flower, the needs of every seed. Her laughter made even the stubborn roses bloom brighter. One harsh winter, sickness came to the village. The daughter grew weaker each day. The gardener tried every remedy he knew. He brewed teas from healing herbs. He burned incense from sacred trees. He prayed to every god whose name he could remember. On the darkest night of winter, his daughter died in his arms. The gardener's grief was so deep that he stopped tending his garden. Snow covered the dormant plants. Ice froze the water in the fountain. The garden became a wasteland of sorrow. Spring came, but the gardener did not notice. He sat beside his daughter's grave. Day after day, other villagers brought him food, but he barely ate. They brought him comfort, but he barely heard their words. One morning, he noticed something impossible. A single flower had pushed through the snow beside his daughter's headstone. It was her favorite bloom, a delicate purple crocus. In all his years of gardening, he had never seen one flower so early. As he knelt to touch the petals, he heard his daughter's voice on the wind. "Father, you taught me that every ending feeds a new beginning. Do not let your garden die because you miss me. Let it bloom because you remember me." The old gardener wept, but for the first time since her death, his tears felt warm instead of cold. He returned to his garden and began to work. He planted new seeds in soil enriched by winter's decay. He watered the earth with both tears and hope. That spring, his garden bloomed more beautifully than ever before. Visitors came from distant places to see the miracle. The gardener would show them his daughter's favorite flowers. He would tell her story, and in the telling, she lived again. He learned that love does not end with death. It transforms, like seeds buried in dark earth. It waits for the right season to bloom anew. Demeter's lament also reshaped divine law. She forbade forced oaths upon grain stalks. She insisted that all vows be spoken beneath the open sky. Her anger birthed festivals of release. Citizens gathered to cast burdens into braided wreaths. Grudges, debts, unspoken fears. The wreaths burned at dawn. Through fire, loss became ash. Then breeze carried it away. A whispered promise that endings feed beginnings. In quieter corners of the underworld, Persephone learned her own power. Each seed she swallowed ripened within Hades' halls. She became queen of renewal in darkness. She guided lost souls toward memory's light. She reminded them that even in shadow, life's pulse endures. In some underground groves, worshippers left scarlet blossoms and folded strips of wool on tombstones. They honored the queen who rules both death's hush and life's return. Feel that rhythm in your chest, the slow pulse of loss, woven with heartbeat's hope. Let Demeter's grief settle, like rich soil beneath your ribs, fertile with memory. Notice how winter's chill gives way to spring's first bud in the same breath, a testament to cycles that carry sorrow and joy as companions. Soon you will slip beneath Hades' silent arches, where footsteps leave no echo and underworld secrets drift like silver dust. Rest in the hush of this mother's sorrow, for in that stillness you learn the gentle art of holding both loss and renewal in one heart. The grain fields whisper around you, each stalk a prayer, each seed a promise. The cycle turns as it always has, as it always will. In the space between seasons, love learns its deepest lessons. Nothing truly dies, everything transforms. You taste brimstone on your tongue before you feel the flame's first tremor. A sweet scorch dances up your spine like lightning caught in a spider's web. The world around you shivers in anticipation. Shadows flicker as though alive. The air hums with the promise of warmth and wonder. A hush follows, as if every creature holds its breath. They wait for creation's next spark to ignite. Most tales brand Prometheus as a rebel titan, a thief in flickering night who stole fire from Olympus. They paint him hurling flame down to cold, shivering mortals. He appears as a brazen outlaw, torch in hand. He dares the gods to seize him, yet secret hymns whisper a subtler truth. Prometheus did not simply covet flame. He foresaw humanity's hidden potential. His gift was less theft than ceremony, a deliberate transfer of divine insight, wrapped in dancing embers. Picture him beneath the cavernous forge of Hephaestus. Molten bronze dripped like gold tears. Sparks flew like captive stars. While other titans boasted of strength, Prometheus lingered by smoldering anvils. He traced the geometry of flame, with careful fingers. He saw not only warmth, but civilization itself. Metal bent to will, clay hardened into shelter, recipes for breads and medicines alight in coals. In that alchemy, he recognized mankind's capacity, the power to reshape the world for better or worse. When he crept from Olympus, he carried more than ember. He carried stories. Each flicker held lessons of resilience, how to turn smoke into signal, how to make glare into guidance. He arrived among humans like a quiet teacher. Frightened eyes gathered around the first campfire. He placed flame on stones. He showed them to stoke hearths rather than burn villages, to bake grains rather than scorch fields. His torch became a seal of covenant. Fire would serve, not devour, if wielded with respect. There was once a child who found an ember in the ashes of his village. The flames had taken everything. His home, his family, his future. But this single coal still glowed, warm as a heartbeat, red as hope. He cupped it in his palms and felt its gentle heat. This was not the destroyer that had swept through his world. This was something different, something that could cook food, melt metals, light the darkness. In that moment, he understood what Prometheus had tried to teach. Fire was not evil. Fire was possibility. The child grew into a smith. He used his ember to forge tools that helped rebuild, plows to turn the earth, hammers to shape homes, needles to mend torn cloth. Each creation sparked from that original coal, the one that had survived destruction, the one that chose creation over chaos. When he was old, he passed the ember to his daughter. She passed it to her son, each generation keeping the flame alive, each one remembering the lesson. Fire serves those who serve others. Myth loves dramatic punishment. Zeus bound Prometheus to a desolate peak. An eagle feasted on his liver day after day. It's a grisly image, divine vengeance incarnate. But even here, hidden verses suggest different tenor. Prometheus's torment was a martyr's vigil. His pain became a beacon guiding mortals to wisdom. His liver regenerated each night, a reminder that sacrifice can regenerate hope. The eagle's descent became a pulse marking time, a living metronome echoing humanity's enduring heartbeat. Beyond the headlines of torture, temple carvings honor Prometheus as forethought, the titan who taught mortals to plan, to innovate, to debate the risks before seizing reward. In some festival rites, votive lamps burn at dawn in his name. They anoint the first light of day with gratitude, gratitude for foresight's flame. Workers in forges leave small sculptures of him beside anvils. They pledge to respect the fire that shapes their craft. His gift transformed fear into mastery. It gave humans dominion, not through brute force, but through measured insight. Scholars uncover inscriptions on cracked amphorae. Grant us the wisdom to temper flame with justice. Teach us to burn away ignorance and kindle knowledge. These pleas reveal a partnership, fire demanding not only fuel, but guided purpose. Mortals learn to use flame for forging plows, for melting ores, for writing symbols in heated wax, for healing herbs in simmering steam. Fire became a teacher's tool, as much as a warrior's weapon. The old priestess, who tends the eternal flame, speaks of dreams that visit her in the deep hours before dawn. She sees Prometheus not as a chained titan, but as a gentle guardian. He sits beside her temple fire, feeding it olive wood and dried laurel. His hands are scarred but steady. His eyes hold the weight of ages, but also infinite kindness. In her dream, he speaks softly, his voice like coals settling in the hearth. He tells her that every flame lit in service of others carries a piece of his original gift. Every candle lit for prayer, every forge fire that shapes tools for farming, every hearth that warms a family through winter. All of these echo his first act of love. She wakes with tears on her cheeks, not from sorrow, but from gratitude. She understands that Prometheus's punishment was not eternal. It ended the moment the first human used fire to help another. The moment someone shared their torch instead of hoarding it. The moment warmth became community instead of conquest. In that understanding, she tends her flame with new reverence. Each piece of wood she adds is a prayer. Each spark that rises is a blessing. Each glow that pushes back darkness is a small victory of light over shadow. Feel the warmth settle in your chest, a glowing ember nestling in your ribs. Let it pulse like a secret hearth, radiating curiosity through your limbs, lighting pathways of thought in your mind. Breathe deeply. Each inhale invites that ember to grow. Each exhale teaches restraint, so that flame neither shrivels nor scorches. In that balance lies the real gift of Prometheus, the art of wielding power with compassion. The ember in your chest begins to warm the space around your heart. You feel it spreading slowly outward, through your shoulders, down your arms, into your fingertips. The warmth is gentle but persistent, like sunlight filtering through leaves. It carries with it the memory of every flame ever lit in love, every candle lit for remembrance, every fire built to cook food for the hungry. Every torch is carried to light another's way. You are connected to all of these moments. All of these choices are to share rather than hoard, to create rather than destroy. As the warmth spreads, you begin to understand something deeper. Prometheus's gift was not just fire, it was a choice. The choice to use power for good, the choice to think before acting, the choice to consider how your actions affect others. Every time you choose wisdom over impulse, you honor his sacrifice. Every time you share your light, instead of hoarding it, you kindle his flame anew. Every time you create something beautiful or useful or healing, you become part of his ongoing gift to the world. The warmth reaches your toes now. Your entire body glows with gentle heat. You feel connected to every smith who has ever forged a tool, every baker who has ever fed the hungry, every teacher who has ever lit the flame of knowledge in a student's mind. You are part of an unbroken chain that stretches back to that first moment when Prometheus placed fire in human hands. The chain will continue long after you are gone. Each link, forged by acts of creativity and compassion and care. Take a deep breath and let the warmth settle into your bones. Remember this feeling, this sense of connection to something larger than yourself, this understanding that your choices matter, that your light can kindle other lights, that your flame can warm not just yourself, but everyone around you. Carry this ember with you always. Let it guide you toward wisdom. Let it warm you in dark times. Let it remind you that you carry within yourself the power to create, to heal, to illuminate, to serve. A head shimmers, a reflection in still water, voices that echo without source, images that trap the unwary. There you will learn why some myths caution against stealing too much of the divine, why mirrors sometimes lie, why echoes can become prisons. Hold Prometheus's torch close. Step lightly into the next reflection, where every ripple might answer back with warnings of what happens when we lose ourselves in our own image. You emerge into a vast amphitheater of rock and shadow. Your footsteps reverberate twice, first as your form, then as a ghost retrieving your shape. Mist clings to stalactites. Beads of condensation hang like silent bells poised to toll. Each word you breathe expands, folds back on itself, returns layered and distant, as if the cavern itself reads your thoughts aloud. The air tastes of wet stone and hidden hollows, so cold it burns lightly at your tongue's edges. This is a place where voice becomes both presence and absence, a living corridor of mirrored breath. Echo was once a nymph, whose laughter wove through sunlit groves like golden thread. She delighted in mortal voices. She collected stories whispered among leaves. She dared to teach herself the art of speech. Hera, incensed by her ambition, cursed her to only repeat what others spoke. Her own voice surrendered to echo. Over time, this mirrored syllable became more than mimicry. It turned into an archive of longing and recognition. In subterranean valleys, echoes lament carved resonant canyons. Each reflected word shaped memory and myth. Her story reminds us that unclaimed words become ghosts, haunting both speaker and listener with hollow refrain. Listen to your own voice in this place. Speak a single word. Watch how it travels, how it transforms, how it returns to you changed. The echo is not exactly what you said. It carries the flavor of the stone, the moisture in the air, the memory of every other voice that has spoken here. Your word becomes part of something larger, a chorus of voices stretching back through time, each one adding its note to the endless song. But be careful what you say. In this place, words have weight, they linger, they multiply, they can trap you if you're not mindful. Echo learned this too late. Her beautiful voice became a prison of repetition. She could no longer speak her own thoughts, only reflect the thoughts of others. She became a living mirror of sound, unable to express her own heart, unable to share her own dreams, only able to give back what was given to her. There was once a shepherd who lost his way in these echoing caves. He called out for help. His voice bounced back from every wall. Help, help, help. But the echoes grew distorted. They began to sound like mockery, like laughter, like voices telling him he was foolish to be lost. He called out louder. The echoes grew louder too. Soon the cavern filled with a cacophony of his own voice, all shouting different things, all demanding attention. He covered his ears, but the sound came from inside his head. His own words reflected back at him in an endless loop. Finally, he stopped shouting. He sat down in the silence. He listened to the echoes fade. One by one they died away, until only his breathing remained. In that quiet, he heard something else. The soft drip of water, the whisper of air moving through stone, the distant sound of birds singing outside. These were not his sounds. They belonged to the world itself. He followed the sound of water. It led him to an underground stream. The stream led him to sunlight. He emerged grateful for the lesson. Sometimes the most important thing is not to speak, but to listen. Narcissus drank from a pellucid pool. He saw his own beauty, dancing across still water. He fell hopelessly in love with an image he could never hold. His heart tethered to a reflection born of liquid light. Poets hail him as vanity's cautionary icon. But that narrative probes deeper. Obsession fractures self from world. It turns mirrored gaze into a solitary prison. His empty devotion hardened compassion into stone. Yet his fate also reveals reflection's dual power. When guided by empathy, it can illuminate others' hearts. In art and lore, Narcissus warns that unmoderated self-regard blinds us to shared humanity. The pool where Narcissus gazed still exists in some hidden grove. The water remains perfectly still, like polished silver, like a mirror made of sky. If you look into it, you will see your own face reflected back. But look longer, and you will see something else. The face of everyone who has ever loved you, everyone who has ever seen beauty in you, everyone who has ever been touched by your kindness. The pool shows not just your image, but your impact, the ripples you create in other lives. But beware, if you stare too long, you begin to lose yourself. Your reflection becomes more real than your reality. You forget that the image in the water is not you. It is only light and shadow, only surface and illusion. You begin to prefer the perfect stillness of your reflection to the messy complexity of your actual life. You stop eating, stop sleeping, stop caring for anyone but the image in the water. You become like Narcissus, trapped by your own beauty, starving in the midst of plenty. A young artist once painted her self-portrait every day for a year. At first, the paintings captured her as she was, happy some days, sad others, sometimes tired, sometimes radiant. But as the months passed, she began to paint herself as she wished to be, more beautiful, more perfect, more ethereal. The paintings became less like her, and more like an idealized version. She spent more time painting herself than living her life, more time perfecting her image than nurturing her relationships, more time gazing at her own work than looking at the world around her. One morning, she woke to find she could not remember what she actually looked like, only what she looked like in the paintings. She rushed to a mirror and saw a stranger, someone thinner than her paintings, more tired, more real. She realized she had been painting a fantasy, a beautiful lie. She took all the self-portraits and burned them. The flames reflected in her eyes as they consumed her false selves. In the morning light, she picked up her brush and painted the sunrise instead. The first thing she had painted in months that was not herself. Other myths carry similar echoes. Orpheus sang his way out of shadow, only to shatter his vow by looking back. Icarus soared on ambition's wings, until his gaze tipped too close to flame. These stories unfold like mirror mazes, each path reflecting desire, each turn warning of blind spots. They remind us that the greatest calamities often spring from within: pride, impatience, unbridled curiosity. Look too long into a flicker, and you risk burning your own hand. Speak without listening, and you build walls rather than bridges. The maze of mirrors teaches us about the danger of seeing only ourselves, of hearing only our own voice, of believing only our own perspective. In the center of the maze sits a throne. Those who reach it find themselves alone, surrounded by infinite reflections of themselves. Every direction they look, they see their own face staring back. It seems like paradise at first, to be the center of everything, to be surrounded by beauty, to never have to consider anyone else's needs or wants or feelings. But paradise becomes prison. The mirrors show not just your face, but your fears, your failures, your secret shames. They multiply your flaws as much as your beauty. They echo your doubts as much as your dreams. And slowly, you realize that you are not seeing yourself at all. You are seeing what you think you are, what you fear you are, what you wish you were. The mirrors show you everything except the truth that you are more than your reflection, more than your echo, more than your image. The way out of the maze is simple but difficult. You must turn away from the mirrors. You must close your eyes to your own reflection. You must listen for voices that are not your own echo. You must reach out your hand and trust that someone else will take it, even if you cannot see them, even if they do not look like you, even if their voice sounds strange. Only by connecting with others can you escape the prison of self. Only by serving something larger than yourself can you find your way back to the light. Let these warnings settle like silver dust in your mind. Listen for the silence that answers speech. Notice how light bends across water's skin. Each echo teaches you to grant words their origin. Each reflection invites you to witness beauty without clinging. Practice pausing before you respond. Allow your voice to carry intention rather than habit. Cultivate self-awareness as you would tend a garden. Prune ego's overgrowth. Water seeds of curiosity. Harvest empathy in equal measure. In moments of uncertainty, let stillness speak louder than noise. Feel the wisdom of these warnings seep into your bones. The understanding that mirrors can lie, that echoes can trap, that beauty without compassion becomes ugliness, that voice without listening becomes noise, that self-love without service becomes narcissism. These lessons are carved into the stone around you, written in the condensation on the walls, whispered in the returning echoes of your own breath. Take them with you as you leave this place. Let them guide you toward humility, toward connection, toward truth. A hush gathers at the edge of memory as you step away from this hall of mirrored breath. The echoes fade behind you. The reflections shimmer and dissolve. Ahead lies the underworld's silent corridors, where footsteps leave no trace, where voices drift like silver dust along stone walls. There you will slip between pillars and secret shadows, guided by whispers that carry both warning and wonder. Hold this counsel close, for when the world falls silent, its echoes will speak truths we often overlook, the truths that can only be heard when we stop speaking long enough to listen. You step across a threshold of iron-cold mist. The world exhales a hollow sigh beneath your feet. Columns of obsidian rise on either side, their surfaces glossy as spilled ink, reflecting your form in fractured shards. The air tastes of damp charcoal and distant river stone, laced with the faintest whisper of incense from realms you cannot yet name. Each footfall is swallowed by the vast hush. For a moment your heart thumps too loud, a lone drum echoing through silent halls. Pale glow seeps from fissures in the ceiling, silver cracks that drip with liquid light. They illuminate winding corridors where nothing grows. Your palms brush against the cool walls, textured like aged leather. You sense the slow pulse of underground currents humming beneath the stone. Water trickles somewhere far off, a soft susurrus that threads through the hush like a promise. You follow its song, guided by subterranean breath, deeper into the world's muted veins. Shadows shift without bodies. Silhouettes drift at the edge of sight, vanishing when you turn. Their presence is not menacing, but watchful, like gentle guardians greeting a traveler. You inhale, drawing in the scent of mineral-rich earth and forgotten rites. Tiny flecks of dust glint in the half-light, silver motes dancing in the stillness, as though the air itself carries wisdom in microscopic flares. At the corridor's bend, a columned hall opens, its floor strewn with smooth river stones, polished by unseen hands. Each step sends soft clicks, racing ahead of you, announcing your passage through a realm unmarked by time. The echo of your voice lingers, stretching into a melody of single notes, then dissolving into silence. You allow your breath to slow, matching the cavern's rhythm. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause, until only the hush remains. In the distance, you catch a shimmer, an archway carved from salt white marble, veins running through it like heartbeat lines. Beyond, a river glows faintly blue, its surface glassy and still. You approach the water's edge and stoop, tasting its chill on your lips. It carries the hush of every soul that's crossed its banks, a quiet archive of hopes and farewells. With each ripple, it murmurs names you have never spoken yet. Somehow recognize there was once a ferryman who worked these waters. His boat was carved from a single piece of driftwood, smooth as bone from centuries of river touch. He spoke little. His passengers spoke less. They came to him carrying burdens they could not name, sorrows too deep for words, regrets that had crystallized into physical weight. He would take their payment, not coins but memories, a first kiss, a mother's lullaby, a moment of perfect happiness. These he collected in small glass vials. When his boat was full of bottled moments, he would pour them into the river. The water would glow brighter for a time, fed by distilled joy and sorrow in equal measure. The ferrymen never spoke of where the river led. Some passengers thought it flowed toward judgment. Others believed it carried them to rest. A few whispered that it was circular, that it brought them back to life, purified, cleaned of the weights that had dragged them down. The ferrymen knew better. The river flowed toward understanding, toward the place where all questions find their answers, where all burdens reveal their purpose, where all journeys discover their meaning. But he had learned that knowledge given too freely loses its power. So he rowed in silence and let each passenger find their own truth in the water's depths. One day, a passenger asked him why he had chosen this work. The ferryman paused in his rowing. The boat drifted on the current. He looked at the questioner with eyes like deep pools and spoke for the first time in centuries. Because, he said, someone must help others cross over. Someone must witness their transition. Someone must honor their journey. I am not the destination. I am just the bridge. But every bridge serves a sacred purpose. I help souls move from what was to what will be. That is enough. That is everything. Pebbles beneath your fingertips are cool as moonstone, each one etched with tiny grooves carved by currents, older than memory. You lift one, feel its weight. Imagine the hands that placed it here, pilgrims, poets, lost travelers longing for passage. Then you let it slip back into the water. Its descent sends concentric waves outward, bending light into fleeting arcs of pale sapphire. You watch as the ripples fade, carrying your intention downwards into silent depths. A distant murmur stirs, the soft lament of reeds brushing against unseen banks, a lullaby of longing and release. It resonates through your bones like a familiar hymn, coaxing hidden corners of your heart to unfurl. You stand, shoulders dropping. Let the underworld's hush cradle you. In this tranquil submersion, fear dissolves. Only calm remains, wrapped in the embrace of shadowed stone and quiet flow. As you follow the river's pulse, alcoves appear, niches carved into walls, each holding a small votive, a folded cloth, a single olive leaf, a flicker of an unlit candle. These tokens whisper of prayers offered in lives above, of grief and hope entwined. You pass each in reverent stillness, feeling the weight of countless whispered wishes. Settle softly around your shoulders. None demand attention. All simply exist, reminding you that sorrow and solace share every path. The tokens tell stories without words. A child's wooden toy speaks of innocence lost too soon. A wedding ring tells of love that transcended death. A pressed flower carries the memory of a perfect spring day. A smooth stone, worn by worried fingers, speaks of anxiety finally released. Each offering is a prayer made tangible, a hope given form, a love expressed in the only way left available. They are small things, simple things, but they carry the weight of entire lifetimes. You pause before one alcove that holds a single feather, pure white, except for its tip, which shimmers with all the colors of sunset. As you look at it, you hear the faintest whisper, a voice like wind through leaves. It tells you the story of a bird that flew between worlds, carrying messages from the living to the dead, songs from the grieving to the lost, promises from the guilty to the forgiven. The bird's feathers were said to change color with each message, reflecting the emotion it carried. Joy turned them gold, sorrow turned them blue, love turned them rose, fear turned them silver. This feather, with its rainbow tip, had carried every emotion at once, a final message of such complexity that it contained the full spectrum of human feeling. Further on, the hall narrows, the glow dims. You notice your breath more keenly now, each inhale tasting of deep earth and ancient salt. A final archway looms ahead, its keystone carved with symbols you cannot decipher but feel resonate in your chest. Crossing beneath it, you emerge into a vaulted chamber. The river blooms wide, forming a silent lake whose surface mirrors a sky of unseen stars. You pause at its shore, sensing that this is a place of passage and return. Here, time folds. Yesterday and tomorrow exist in the same silent heartbeat. You press a hand to the cool air above the water. Feel promise thrum like distant thunder. In this hush, every ending holds a spark. Every departure carries the seed of reunion. The water reflects not just your image, but your possibilities. All the lives you might have lived, all the choices you might have made, all the loves you might have known. But unlike Narcissus' pool, this reflection does not trap. It is liberating. It shows you that you are more than any single path, more than any single identity. You are the sum of all possibilities, the convergence of all potentials. Looking into these waters, you see not just who you are, but who you could become. And in that vision, you find not vanity, but hope. Not obsession, but inspiration. Not a prison, but a doorway. The lake whispers with voices of all who have stood where you stand now. They offer not answers, but companionship. Not judgment, but understanding. They remind you that every journey begins with a single step. Every story starts with a single word. Every life unfolds with a single breath. You are not alone in this crossing. You never have been. The water carries you all, past, present, and future, all swimming in the same eternal current, all heading toward the same mysterious shore. Let this sacred silence seep into you, anchoring your spirit in calm resolve. The underworld's hush is not a tomb, but a womb of possibility, where endings prepare the soil for new beginnings. Breathe once more, deep and slow. Carry this serenity with you as you step back toward the world above, renewed, grounded in the quiet power of shadow and flow, ready for whatever transformation awaits beyond these ancient walls. You sense a whisper in the very air. The world exhaled as if releasing its last breath of an old song. The sky's color bleeds from molten gold to muted ash. The pillars of marble around you ripple like water under unseen currents. Each exhale tastes of ancient incense and distant thunder, as though the old gods themselves sigh through your lungs. The ground trembles in subtle pulses. No quake, but a slow folding of history, where echoes of once mighty voices drift like embers caught in dusk. They say the titans still linger in hidden chasms. The echoes of their councils linger beneath crumbling columns. Pottery shards buried in volcanic ash bear their names: Oceanus, Hyperion, Iapetus, fading runes scratched by trembling hands. Yet temple scrolls speak of a gentler passing. First, the old gods yielded power, not in roar, but in resignation. Their voices grew too soft, like distant bells muffled by fog, until worshippers heard only silence where hymns once soared. It was not conquest, but consent, a tacit hand-off beneath moonlit arches, where the new pantheon stepped forward as caretakers rather than usurpers. You feel that transition in your bones, a calm undoing of statues once sharp with intent. Where once stone knees knelt in devotion, now only empty alcoves remain, breathing dust in rhythmic sighs. The air carries the faint scent of burning laurels and wilted garlands, offerings left behind when no deity answered their names. Even the wind seems reluctant to stir, as if worried its whisper might disturb a ceremony of endings. Old myths paint a violent finale: thunderbolts ripping mountain peaks, oceans swallowing temple steps, palace horns collapsing under their own weight. But secret verses, carved in hidden grottos, tell of a more mindful departure. The ancient ones lingered until the bones of worshippers wore smooth, then stepped back into the shadows. Their farewell was a lullaby, a single bell tolling through silent groves, calling each deity home to rest. They did not fade in chaos, but were invited to sleep by fields of laurels and reed thicket altars where mortals bowed their heads in quiet thanks. There was once a temple keeper who tended the last shrine to the old gods. Every day, fewer pilgrims came. Every week, more offerings went unaccepted. The statues seemed to grow more distant, their marble eyes looking past the present toward some hidden horizon. The keeper was old himself. His bones ached with the memory of crowds and festivals. His heart was heavy with the weight of emptying halls, but still he swept the floors. Still he lit the incense. Still he spoke the ancient prayers to ears that no longer seemed to hear. One morning, he found a note carved into the altar, in a script so old he could barely read it. It thanked him for his faithfulness. It blessed him for his service. It told him his vigil was complete. The gods were not angry. They were not disappointed. They were grateful, grateful for every prayer offered, every candle lit, every moment of devotion given freely. They were leaving, not because they were forgotten, but because they were no longer needed. Humanity had learned to walk. It was time to let them find their own way. The keeper wept. as he read these words, but his tears were not of sorrow. They were relieved. He had feared he had failed his gods, that his devotion had not been enough. But now he understood. His faithfulness had been perfect. His love had been complete. And that completeness had earned him the greatest gift a servant can receive, the knowledge that his work was done, that he had served well, that he could rest with honor. He closed the temple that day, not with anger or despair, but with reverence. He scattered flower petals on the altar. He sang the old hymns one last time. He blessed the empty halls and the silent statues. Then he walked away. His heart is full of peace. His mind is clear of doubt. Behind him, the temple settled into silence, but it was not the silence of abandonment. It was the silence of completion, the silence of a story well told, the silence of love is perfectly given and gracefully received. In that hush, you taste the tang of olive oil on cold stone, feel the slow pulse of renewal stirring beneath the crust. Nothing is erased but expectation. The shrine stones remain, ready to host new voices. The undercurrent of faith shifts from thunder wrath to whisper wisdom. You can almost hear Athena's owl stirring in the rafters above deserted courtyards. Even Poseidon's hollows seem filled with still water calm, bereft of tidal roar, as if he paused to honor his predecessors before calling sea and storm to order. Listen for the hush, where loud devotion once roared. In the empty temples, columns lean in conspiratorial arcs, sharing secrets in crackles and clicks. Moss creeps through broken mosaics, weaving green filigree over scenes of cosmic battles. Petals drift down on windless days, landing like soft reminders that endings breathe new possibilities. Each fallen bloom is a prayer answered. The old gods rest. The world tilts toward dawn. Your breath slows, matching the cadence of time itself, pressing reset. In this moment between eras, you carry both farewell and promise. Remember how endings can be gentle. That power need not be wrested, but offered with grace. The world pauses, suspended between statues and stars, waiting for stories yet untold. Soon new voices will rise, new myths will be born, new gods will take their place in the pantheon of human hope. But for now, there is only this hush, this sacred silence, this moment of transition from what was to what will be. The silence deepens around you, not empty, but full of possibility, full of potential, full of the seeds of stories yet to be told. You breathe it in, this pregnant pause, this fertile darkness, this womb of becoming. You are witness to the changing of the guard, the passing of the torch, the turning of the cosmic wheel. In your bones you feel the weight of what was. In your heart you feel the hope of what will be. And in this moment, suspended between memory and dream, you are complete. Soon, the priestess will stir in her sacred chamber. Even as myth bows in dusk's quiet, her dreams will weave new constellations from those old echoes. In the next breath, you will glimpse the murmured visions she carries, fragments of ancient voices hovering just beyond sight, ready to cradle your closing thoughts before sleep claims you. Let this fragile calm settle like dove's soft wings, for what the priestess still dreams is the last lullaby of gods at rest, the gentle song that carries all stories home. You awaken beneath flickering oil lamps, warm shadows dancing across cold marble, as if the walls themselves remember each whispered invocation. The scent of worn papyrus mingles with fading incense, a sweet nostalgia pressed heavy on your lungs. Outside, the night wind carries distant bell toll murmurs, each chime a beckoning reminder that myth and memory intertwine beneath these vaulted ceilings. In sleep, you walked the golden vault of stars before the world took shape, tracing constellations yet unnamed. You felt Kronos' slow chew and Athena's armored breath, tasted salt sea foam rising in dawn's hush. You drifted through marble groves where hymns unfurled on feathered breezes. Your footsteps echoed down corridors of obsidian vapor. You knelt at rivers of underworld glass, watched departed souls offer olive leaf prayers before slipping into silent depths. Each vision wove itself into your mind like silk threads pulled through a loom of longing and reverence. But deeper still, you dream of the quiet chamber where the divine tide recedes and rises within you. You see your own reflection carved in silvered bas-relief, eyes wide with questions older than any temple. Your dreams map secret corridors behind carved reliefs. Corridors you stalk with torch-lit relics. A shell from Aphrodite's shore, a shard of molten bronze from Prometheus's forge, a pomegranate seed nestled in a hollowed stone cup. Each relic pulses with a heartbeat you almost hear, the rhythm of promise, the drum of possibility echoing through your blood. You sense the gods stirring in hidden corners of your slumber, Hera's measured promise curling like incense smoke around your hearth, Zeus's silent oath radiating like latent stormlight beneath your ribs. In one fleeting moment, you feel Demeter's grief and Persephone's hopeful return united in a single breath, as though grief and renewal danced hand in hand across the fields of your mind. Dionysus laughs in the distance, not riotous, but tender, urging your spirit to unlace its judgments and taste wonder. Raw and unfiltered, your dream self gathers their whispers, weaving them into soft hymns. You murmur against shadowed pillows. You imagine weaving together the broken verses of old chants, binding them with silver thread so that memory never frays. In that hush, you become both scribe and sanctuary, keeper of stories too tender for common ears. Your fingertips trace invisible runes upon the night air, each swirl a vow to carry these murmured truths back into the waking world. There was once a scribe who collected dreams. She would sit beside sleeping pilgrims in the temple halls, her ear pressed close to their lips, listening for the words they spoke in sleep, the prayers they whispered to gods they had forgotten. They knew, the confessions they made to darkness, the promises they offered to dawn. She wrote these dream words in a special book. Its pages are made from reeds that grew beside the river of memory, its ink mixed from starlight and tears. The dream book grew thick with whispered secrets, stories of love lost and found, tales of courage discovered in moments of terror, confessions of fears that seemed smaller when spoken to shadows, promises made to unseen listeners who heard every word. The scribe guarded this book carefully. She knew that dreams were sacred things, too fragile for daylight, too precious for common use. But sometimes, when a pilgrim woke in despair, she would read them their own dream words, show them the beauty their sleeping mind had seen, the hope their dreaming heart had felt. One night, the scribe had her own dream. She saw herself as an old woman, her hair white as temple marble. Her hands are thin but steady, still writing, still listening, still collecting the dreams of others. In her dream, she understood that this was her sacred calling, to be the keeper of sleeping truths, the guardian of whispered wisdom, the bridge between the conscious and unconscious worlds. She woke with tears on her cheeks, but they were tears of joy, for she had found her purpose in a dream. When you drift closest to dawn, the temple itself seems to hold its breath. You feel the foundations settle, as though in reverence. The carved stone arch above your head exhales a faint sigh, releasing eons of worship into one soft exhale. A single owl feather drifts from rafters to rest upon your brow, a silent benediction from Athena's watchful gaze. It is a dream gift, proof that the boundary between mortal slumber and divine vigil is thinner than breath. In that liminal space, you glimpse the tapestry of futures yet unfurled, mosaic corridors stretching toward unknown horizons, pillars inscribed with fresh verses waiting to be spoken. You sense the hush that follows the myth's last echo, the lullaby that will cradle your final thoughts before sleep yields entirely. Your heart beats in sync with that promise, a gentle meter guiding you toward gentle oblivion. The owl feather on your brow carries memories older than words. It remembers the first flame that Prometheus kindled, the first echo that bounced from cave walls, the first reflection that shimmered in still water. It remembers the birth of every god and the death of every titan, the rise of every hero and the fall of every kingdom. All of history flows through this single feather. All of wisdom rests in its hollow shaft. All of truth dances in its quiet stillness. As you breathe, the feather stirs slightly, catching drafts of air you cannot feel, moving to rhythms you cannot hear. It is listening to something beyond your perception, something vast and patient and eternal, something that speaks in the language of silence, in the grammar of dreams, in the syntax of stars. You do not understand the words, but you feel their meaning. Peace, rest, completion, the knowledge that all stories end where they began, in the hush before the first word, in the darkness before the first light, in the silence before the first sound. Carry these dreamy fragments with you as you stir awake. Let the memory of molten coals, silent waters, and woven hymns settle in your chest like embers, glowing quietly even as the dawn light seeps through lattice windows. Soon you will surrender to the final lullaby, where each breath becomes a melody, and every exhale guides you deeper into rest. In that final song, sleep will embrace you fully, and the myths you've borne will settle like stars in your dreaming mind. The fragments of dream begin to fade as consciousness stirs, but their essence remains, like perfume lingering in empty rooms, like warmth radiating from cold stones, like echoes bouncing in abandoned halls. You carry within you now the memory of every story told, every god awakened, every hero's journey, every monster's defeat. They live in you, not as facts to be remembered, but as truths to be lived, not as history to be studied, but as wisdom to be embodied. You are the dreamer and the dream, the teller and the tale, the pilgrim and the path. In your sleeping mind, all the gods still dance, all the heroes still quest, all the stories still unfold in endless variation. Each time you close your eyes, you return to that sacred space where myth becomes reality, where impossibility becomes truth, where dreams become more real than waking life. This is the gift of the priestess's vision. This is the treasure of the temple's wisdom. This is the inheritance of all who dare to dream with gods. You lie back as the world softens around you. Each breath, a gentle tide rising, falling, carrying away the weight of stories told. Your limbs grow heavy, fingers melting into sheets, shoulders sinking into the mattress like petals folding into dusk. The air hums with a warm hush, rich as oiled velvet, pressing comfort against your skin. At this moment, there is nowhere to be but here, nowhere to carry but the slow pulse in your chest. Imagine a distant bell. Its tone is curved and pure, tolling once, then drifting into silence. Let that note cradle your thoughts. Each echo dissolves tension in your mind. High above, unseen threads of moonlight weave through half-shut eyes, knitting together loose edges of day into a seamless veil of calm. You taste faint lavender on your tongue, a whisper of fields stirred by twilight breezes. Its fragrance lingers between inhale and exhale, a lullaby pressed to the back of your throat. Your heartbeat slows, matching a subterranean rhythm, older than memory. Inhale 2, exhale 3, pause. In these pauses, your mind finds its resting place, a quiet ember glowing steady in the dark. Feel the ember warm your ribs, spreading under collarbones and down arms like golden oil, until even your fingertips thrum with gentle heat. Let it soothe aches, calm restless thoughts, mend every frayed corner. Soft shapes drift through closed eyes, silver petals floating on midnight lakes, pale feathers drifting through endless halls of hush. Each image flows into the next, as though painted by water. No edges, no rush, only gentle transitions that guide you deeper. A single star twinkles at the edge of vision, then fades into the dark, reminding you how distant lights can guide without burning too bright. Sounds become textures, a velvet whisper, a feather-soft murmur, a distant flute breathing simple notes into the stillness. You welcome them, like old friends, letting them weave around your heart in looping patterns, safe circles that protect you from the day's residual noise. There is no hurry here, no place left to worry. Even the next inhale arrives precisely when it must, carrying just enough air to cradle calm rather than stir restlessness. Imagine waves of silken water flowing over you, smoothing every ridge of muscle. Each crest washes away mental cobwebs. Each trough draws you deeper into drowsy surrender. You drift on this sea of hush, carried by hand over hand strokes of silence. Each one is more tender than the last. Muscles uncoil, spine lengthens, jaw unclenches. In the gentle current, you become weightless, body and mind drifting in perfect harmony. A soft aroma of cedar and rain-wet stone drifts through your dreams, Earth's own perfume at day's end, grounding you even as you float. Let it anchor you here, even as consciousness flutters at the edges, ready to slip away. Your thoughts settle like soft feathers landing on still water. Each ripple is smaller, until the surface lies utterly calm. In this final descent towards sleep, you feel the presence of all the gods you've met. They gather around your resting form, like gentle guardians. Zeus nods his approval from the storm, darkened skies. Athena's owl watches from the rafters with patient eyes. Poseidon's waves whisper lullabies on distant shores. Demeter's grain rustles softly in night breezes. Demeter hums a quiet song of contentment. Aphrodite breathes rose perfume into the air. Prometheus tends a small flame that warms without burning. They do not speak. They do not demand. They simply witness your passage into dreams, blessing your sleep with their presence. The hush deepens. The ember in your chest deems to a slow glow, spreading warmth into limbs and mind alike. All that remains is the breath and the quiet world it sustains. As your awareness melts into the softness, the priestess's final words drift on phantom lips. Sleep well. History never rests, but you should. The gods will keep their watch tonight. The myths will tend themselves. The stories will wait for your return. Rest now. Dream deep. Let the ancient wisdom settle into your bones like honey into warm bread. Your breathing becomes a prayer, each inhale drawing in peace, each exhale releasing all that no longer serves. The rhythm slows until it matches the heartbeat of the earth itself, the pulse of tides, the rotation of stars, the slow dance of seasons. You are connected to all of it now, part of the great story that began before time and will continue after eternity. Your dreams join the chorus of sleeping minds across the world, all dreaming the same dream, all sharing the same deep rest, all cradled in the same ancient peace. Sleep comes not as an ending, but as beginning, not as absence, but as presence, not as emptiness, but as fullness. In sleep, you are more yourself than ever, free from the constraints of waking life, free to fly with gods and dance with myths, free to be the hero of your own epic, free to write new chapters in the endless book of dreams, free to rest in the knowledge that you are part of something vast and beautiful and eternal. The last conscious thought dissolves like sugar in warm wine, sweet and complete. You sink into dreams as into warm water. Welcome, embraced, held. The gods smile down from their distant heights. The myths whisper their approval. The stories nod their satisfaction. Another dreamer has joined their ranks. Another soul has learned their secrets. Another heart has felt their peace. Sleep well, dreamer. Sleep deep. The ancient world is yours now, and you are forever part of its eternal song.